Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
This week we're going to continue our political fiction festival with 2000's The Contender.
Let's dive on in. All right, everybody, I'm Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Palcher.
Please, if you like what you see /hear, please like and subscribe to our channel. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook even finally got us on there. You can hit
we even got the good old email.
Yeah, if you want to send us, in fact, if you want to send us a real letter, we'll put our address up if you really want to do that. That'd be a hell of a thing, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. But yes, we do this every week. We play festivals. We do lots of fun stuff. So please subscribe. Excited to get into this one. This third installment of our political fiction festival, 2000's The Contender.
Yes.
Directed and written by Rod Lurie. He's kind of done some random stuff over the years, but nothing quite like this one.
It's so weird because this movie is so, kind of foolproof. It's so well thought out, right? And he got such an amazing cadre of actors that I was like, all right, buckle up. What else has this dude done? And then I was like, not a lot.
You think about something like House of Cards that was like a Netflix algorithm of what people like and who they like and what kind of shows they are, and it's just very well thought out and just well produced. So he did the newer Straw Dogs remake, The Last Castle, which I've never seen, Nothing But the Truth, which I've also never seen. So
I saw Nothing But the Truth. It was okay. The story is more interesting because it's the Valerie Plame story. So again, he's going back to this sort of, in that case, a true story, but this political intrigue, drama kind of a case. But he even in that movie, he didn't have the same sort of stable of actors that he got here, where you're going, oh yeah, this is dude, this is cream of the crop. And is this his first movie?
Especially in early 2000s.
Oh yeah.
I think this is his first movie. But Joan Allen, Gary Oldman, Jeff Bridges, Christian Slater, Sam Elliott, William Peterson, and Philip Baker Hall, who I don't know if you knew this or not, but Philip Baker Hall, her dad's part in this movie was supposed to be much bigger, and it all got cut for time. And he was supposed to end up killing himself in the movie because of the motivations of guilt and all this stuff got all cut out. So
oh my God,
wild that
was this his last movie?
One scene.
Was this his last movie?
I don't know. I don't think so.
That's crazy. Well, yeah, because when I saw him again in this, I was like, I didn't remember him being in this, and then he's
in one scene.
Yeah. So
in
those tiny little tennis shorts, tiny Donald Trump tennis shorts that are kind of see through.
Yeah, his character's interesting. We can kind of get to kind of his effect on this whole thing in a little bit, but we have this vice president that has passed away 3 weeks ago. The country's waiting for a new vice president. We have President Jackson Evans. We've had this discussion on podcasts before, but one of our favorite movie presidents. I found out also Obama's favorite movie president.
Really?
Kind of interesting. But we
have
this.
He's good. He's so good here.
He's infectious. I don't care what political party you sway to.
Hey, is this I want to just say it right up here up front. Is this the unofficial Big Lebowski political intrigue sequel? Because we have Sam Elliott from Big Lebowski. We have the dude, and we have bowling.
And bowling.
Yes.
I think that this is what happens if, the dude really took that Man of the Year reflection seriously and didn't, and just, he's like, I need to change my life.
Wait a damn minute here. If I became president, I could just order any kind of food I want, right? That's how the dude abides.
that is one of the ongoing jokes in this movie, which is not really a movie full of jokes at all. It's not really a funny movie at all. It's a pretty heavy drama,
definitely,
for the most part. There's some witty lines and some fun, interactions, but I definitely wouldn't call this a comedy. But that in particular, basically every time he's in the room, he's either eating food or ordering food.
Yeah,
and it's just this fun idiosyncrasy that his character has that just makes him so endearing, and you just fall in love with him.
Because he's trying to trick the kitchen, right? He's always like, do they have this? Do they have this? And we'll get to it later, but at a very pivotal moment in the movie, they don't have the Munster cheese. And that's how you kind of know, like, oh, this is a bad omen, right? It's the first time that he's actually caught him out, and it's right before a very pivotal scene. But no, I completely agree. He is incredibly infectious here. And also just aloof enough. It's so interesting the way
I wonder how
this
aloof
movie deals
he actually is.
Yeah,
I wonder how aloof he actually is, because he's a career politician, I'm sure. He knows how to play both sides, and he knows who's after him. He also is a smart person, and
he's patient
knows when he's being messed with.
He's very patient.
He doesn't rush into anything, and I appreciate that. I think we definitely need to start with this opening scene, because it's very powerful opening, where we have who's it? William Peterson, Governor Hathaway, who's being interviewed on this fishing trip. Obviously, if he's fishing with this journalist, he's got to be somewhat pals with him. So they're fishing. He's taking notes, asking him questions, and he's like pontificating on all this stuff. And he seems genuine. Like he seems like you're like, oh wow, this guy's charming. And boom! All of a sudden, you hear this car screech, and bam! It goes over the edge and into the water, and he just dives in and tries to save this girl. Yep. And it's this heroic thing. They do a really fun thing with the editing here, where they have like the journalist on the phone trying to explain what happened, but they cut him off mid-word, and it makes it seem really frantic and like really amps up the intensity of the feeling of that scene. Yeah, the tension there just talk about like a hell of an opener to a movie. No, I agree. That the rest of the movie very much is the action is and the drama is in crossing and double crossing and a lot of deposition, and there isn't nearly as much action anywhere else in this movie. But for this opener, it is like super intense and on rewatching, there's a couple things that girl yells from inside that car that I was like, oh shit, they get, like, you don't hear her, you just see her mouth, and you're like, they give it away. They give it away in the very beginning of the movie. She's sitting there, she's yelling governor. Which, watching this time, I was like, that's ballsy. That we don't hear her, but you see her mouth, and you're like, oh wow, okay. So again, we already said in the bumper that we spoil, but this is a huge twist that comes towards the end. We'll get into it then. But it's just interesting to know that like they give they put it out on a platter if you are paying close enough attention in the first 2 minutes of the movie. I love it. No, I love stuff like that, and. That seems like something the Coen brothers would do, right? Just put it right out there in the first scene, but you have no idea what's happening. Yeah, you don't know. You don't have enough information yet, because you're thinking Hathaway is this hero, and he even goes on the news and is lauded as being this hero. Yeah, and goes so they're right into that news. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, this is it, man. And even then, he is being very contrite. He's like, well, I'm not a hero. I didn't save her. Yeah, and she didn't live. But they're like, he is on the short list to be the new VP. He goes in to meet with both President Evans as well as Kermit. Sam Elliott's character here, the chief of staff. Which all you got to do to make Sam Elliott a huge son of a bitch is shave his mustache off. You shave his mustache off, and he turns into the creepiest asshole on the planet. He's amazing here. Yeah, I would say only second to the number one creepiest chief of staff, which would be I forgot the actor's name from Dave. Frank Langella. Yes,
He's the number one creepiest chief of staff.
Oh, that's good. Well, yeah, I think it's fun that, or it's kind of interesting that they start with like the first 2 or 3 scenes are all about Hathaway.
Yeah,
and
then he disappears.
He comes into the Oval Office. Well, I wouldn't say he disappears. I'd say he comes in the Oval Office, and you think Bridges is going to give him this opportunity, and he's like, pretty much straight up with him said, "You're not getting it."
Well,
sorry.
He says we don't need another Chappaquiddick, right?
Chappaquiddick, yep.
And that bell that can't be unrung of Ted Kennedy with Chappaquiddick was like, well, what were you actually doing? Were you responsible for this woman's death? And we're as outraged as Governor Hathaway is, because we're like, he didn't have anything to do with it. He tried to say, if he hadn't been there, the woman just would have drowned, right? But we are left with a weird little needling feeling once he takes the car back and we get to meet his dragon of a wife, who basically, she's like, oh, this is it? This is what you're going to do? You're just going to give up? Like,
I just want you to give a shit.
It is like, at that moment you kind of go, wait, is there more to this part of the story than we know about?
Kind of. I think on a first watch, though, you probably are just like, wow, she's pissed.
Yeah, she's an asshole.
He becomes definitely more of a puppet for this whole thing and other people's ideals. And then we kind of find out who he really wants, and it's Senator Elaine Hanson, which is Joan Allen's character, who, we've always loved. She's always been, like, cast as a supporting spouse. Mm-hmm. And I really love that she takes the lead role here, and she's so good here. Along with everyone else.
She can rock that. She can rock that haircut, dude.
Yeah, and you're sharing time with one of the all-time greats and Gary Oldman.
Yeah,
and sharing time with him. There's a lot of amazing actors you're trying to match here, and I think she holds herself true.
Oh God, yeah.
She's really fun. I do love this teasing of exposition where our first introduction with her is her fooling around with her husband.
I agree because
it's really interesting.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, so much of the rest of this movie is about these rumors and innuendos and accusations about the morality of her character, and her having to be very stoic, and in a lot of ways this almost kind of like piety, this almost Joan of Arc kind of character. So for us to meet her,
Joan,
so for
Joan of Allen.
Yes, Joan of Allen. So for us to meet her not like that, for us to meet her,
not behind a desk.
With her pants off and her husband's pants off. It's like, that's really fun. That's a great way to start it off. It humanizes her, right?
It does, but it also puts this little thought in your mind of like, oh, she's a little promiscuous.
She is a little frisky,
right?
Like,
yeah. Obviously this turns into this huge sex scandal as she's going through her confirmation to become VP. Who, it's Jackson Evans. It's a big step in his career. It's the legacy he wants to live behind.
It's the old man's swan song. They say that like 200 times.
They do.
Yeah.
And then we meet Mr. Oldman here, Shelley Runyon. Who, man, he's so good here.
This might be one of his best roles, and I think it gets forgotten a lot.
That's saying a lot, but he's really good.
But think about it this way. Like, for Gary Oldman to play Beethoven, right, in Immortal Beloved, for Gary Oldman to play Sid Vicious, right? Like, those ones you're like, this is great. He gets to chomp this scenery. He gets to use his traditional British accent. He gets to do all these fun things. Here, he disappears into this character. He is Shelley Runyon.
I think. Oh, he does. He's a chameleon. That's what makes him so good. You think about True Romance or, a million other things that he's in. The Professional, like
Dracula.
He's a chameleon. I think he commands the screen every time, and I think he's chomping just as much here.
He is, but I guess he just like the mannerisms and the stylization and that, like, I don't know. Should we look up the makeup artist? Because I want to say that whoever did his balding fro has to be the same one that did Sean Penn's balding fro from Carlito's Way, because it's brilliant. It's so perfectly well done.
Yeah, is there a balding guy in Hollywood?
It's the balding
underrated.
It's the balding Jewish afro. It's like they have one guy, and he's like, if you need the balding Jewish afro, he's your guy. And it turns out to be Art Garfunkel.
That's pretty much what it looks like. But he doesn't want to confirm her just because she's a woman, and he just doesn't think she's right for the job.
Well, he thinks it's symbolic, right? He thinks like, why a woman? Like, why does it have to be a woman? Which is a very like traditional, I think, from the conservative slant aspect of like, oh, you're playing identity politics, right? And so he's four squares against it from the beginning there, right?
Oh, and he's totally doing that through the whole confirmation. He's playing to stereotypes, that kind of thing. Like, hey, if you have another kid, are you going to take maternity leave, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
But and then we get Christian Slater here, who is this congressman who's kind of wants to play on Shelley's team, but is still a Democrat. And, he's got a very interesting perspective here because he kind of wants to play both sides, but he doesn't really know what he's getting into, I think, because he's so young.
Yeah, he's idealistic. I mean, we get this great moment of him walking around looking at the paintings of the presidents in the White House, and we get that great trumpeting brass patriotic music behind him.
Feel proud.
Yeah, and he's so idealistic, and he's this young House Judiciary Committee member, and he's really swept up by the majesty of it all, and so he feels like I'm objective. I can be objective about this. And you see him starting to play that. It's really interesting to watch him and Shelley bounce off of each other. Him and Oldman's character bounce off of each other because he thinks he understands this, and very quickly he gets terrified by, he thinks, oh, I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to be principled. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, wow. Oh, this is... So we are just going to do this thing, right? And
all of a sudden he's in this back room that Oldman has trying to get Hathaway nominated and kind of to discredit her as much as possible.
Well, and I love this idea, and there aren't nearly as many, and it's weird. I already mentioned the movie Dave before, but I'm going to mention it again.
You love that movie.
Well, I do love that movie, but I think that
it's a good movie.
We don't see enough of these sort of like executive branch political intrigue films that have these weird side characters. And again, I'm reminded of Ben from Being There. These characters that just happen to be in the room, and you're like, who the hell are you? And it's like, oh, he's got the information. And we have these like creepy guys that are Shelley Runyon's buddies. And one of them says, and this, I would think, if you were going to put a tagline at the bottom of the Contender to really get people to watch it, it's what this guy says, because he says, we are going to gut the bitch in the belly. Make no mistake, we're going to ruin a life, but we will get you the vice presidency. And you just go, wow, man, we're going to ruin a life, right? And you just think like, there are totally people right now, as we record this show, that are in some back room, cigar smoke filled room, like in the basement of the White House or wherever, where those kinds of comments are being said about public figures, right? And it's like, that's terrifying, but that's completely the way that it works, right? And then what we see, we meaning the public, is this showboating fanfare, which is Shelley Runyon's committee hearings. Right? Which he makes it look like everything's fair and that they're just talking, but...
Yeah, I mean, how different is that fanfare than what Robert De Niro's doing in Wag the Dog, right? It's same thing. You saw it on TV, right?
Now it's real. Well, I mean, and we get this with so many moments of this congressional hearing, but let's get to this character assassination and what Shelley's sort of machinations here are.
Before we get to that, I want to talk about her cute as hell little kid who says, "Baby Jesus gives it top spin." Do you know what that is? That's top spin. If you know where that comes from, baby Jesus gave
They get taught to teach, not to preach. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
But baby he's just the cutest little kid, and he goes on to name all the presidents and has this really cute scene with Jackson Evans. But the scene
he says that it's better to be the vice president because no one wants to shoot the vice president.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, he's like, it's got a point. Kid's got a point.
Before we get to Shelley's, I think this is important. Even though a lot of this got cut, she really wants her dad's blessing. I think it's important to know too that she changed parties.
Yeah.
In midstream.
Don't do it.
But just
it's hackneyed culture. Don't do it.
But I don't know. I think that's important to see because she thought the values of her party had changed over time. This is kind of a Bush era. I think that this was made in, right?
Pre 9/11. I mean, it's
a response to that. And as much as you hate Shelley Runyon, Gary Oldman's character in here, he actually doesn't really like this movie, and thought his character was portrayed much more poorly than he was originally in the script because they changed it a lot.
Really?
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
But obviously we get this file full of someone getting gangbanged in
a college party.
Frat party. Sex scandal to discredit her.
I love the way this is directed, where it's like they're talking about it. And they are like, the people who are talking about it, almost you can almost hear the bile in their throat where they're like, what the hell? And then we get these blink flashes of the party with these lurid images of this naked woman's body with these men around her, and it just flashes there and then it's gone, and it flashes there and it's gone. But it makes it not,
it's like a memory.
It makes it not sexual as much as it does just revolting, where you're like, oh God, oh my God, that's her. Oh my God. Right. Like, it's so well done.
Nothing sexy about it, and Kermit obviously wants this to go away. She was supposed to be the VP nomination that wasn't going to cause any drama, and is asking her to deny it, and she basically says it's beneath her to do so.
And she has a point. She's like, even if I did it, it was a private sexual encounter, right? And it's like,
what business is it of yours? If I was a guy, this wouldn't even be a question.
Which she's completely right about. She's completely right about that. And I love this moment, this back and forth. It's one of the best parts of the movie, I think. And
is it when they have dinner, or it's not even dinner?
Well, the lunch scene is insane.
She gets there and he's already eating, so he's disrespecting her from the beginning.
And then trying to get her to have a little bit of steak. A little bit of steak.
And then orders for her already. He's like, oh, don't worry about it. And it's like, just zero respect. You can tell he does not at all. And so, I don't know. It's
that's amazing. The scene I was thinking of. Oh, go ahead.
He says he despises her selfishness, which we've seen none of that so far. In this movie, where you see her trying to be selfish or playing an angle to benefit herself. She's truly just trying to protect herself.
Well, and I mean, again, that's easy for him to say when what we come to find out is the entire reason for his pettiness and for this entire vendetta is because...
Yes, this was a reveal I forgot about, and makes a lot of
he was
sense.
Up. It was down to him or Evans, right? Like, they were up against each other, and he got the presidency. He stole the presidency, and Shelley's never forgiven him, and so he wants to roadblock him in any way that he can. Now, the scene I was going to say is one of the best in the movie, in my opinion, is the scene right before their lunch, where Kermit has everybody together talking about trying to find dirt on Shelley, and we get Sam Elliott just angry and pacing around, and he's like, "Stocks? You're talking about goddamn stocks." He's like, "I want something embarrassing, something sexual, little boys, midgets, cows. I don't give a shit." And she, Lainey's so great. She's like, "Oh, Jesus, Kermit, come on." And the other guy's like, he never even cheated on his wife. And then Lainey goes, "Well, it's too bad that he isn't up for election in France. We could really nail him to the wall with that one." And they all break their anger and laugh at that. And it gives you a great moment of realizing what a sharp wit she has. And then also, even though everybody's angry, politics is still politics, which is like, if somebody really fires off a good one, you can stop being angry to be like, that was funny. Right. And I love that's happening here. Like,
absolutely. I don't think I've ever seen Sam Elliott so pissed in a scene.
Oh, it's fantastic. Something sexual, like
something embarrassing. No,
just that upper lip. You never see it. And when you do, you're like, oh, I don't like it.
Let's talk about this little side plot that's going on with this girl from the FBI, where you don't really know what she's getting into or why she's doing what she's doing, but you have fun with her, and she kind of plays this like ditzy part, but you know she's not. You know,
she's like, great.
When she approaches the I think it's a judge on the green of a golf course. She's like, "Oh, what kind of hidden stick are you using there?"
Exactly.
Like just playing up her ignorance that we've kind of been poking at through Joan Allen's character.
Exactly, but then you get these like weird moments where, again, when she's talking to Hathaway, and she's like, "Do you think it was weird that you didn't catch any bass since that's crab? That's a crab area?" And he's like, I don't know. I don't know. And she's just like, huh. It's so good. The Paige Wilhelmina is her character's name. Yeah. She's fantastic.
She definitely is there to implant doubt, right? Like I think she's there, and you don't exactly know what's going on. Then we move on to really the first time we see Jackson Evans and the Senator Lane. Him saying, like, kind of confronting this with her face to face of what we should do about it. And he's kind of, this is one of these moments where you really love and respect his character in here, because he's kind of mulling it over, and you can tell he hasn't decided, and he's just like, you know what, just look those bastards in the eye and tell them what the truth.
Yeah, he's like, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, you shouldn't say anything. The way in which, and at this point when this starts, this is really
we're getting into the hearing, right?
We're getting into the hearing, and I love, again, to go to Christian Slater's character sort of before he becomes disenfranchised with the angle that Shelley's taking, is we get to see him, Christian Slater's character, really trying to sort of play up this angle where right out of the gates when Hanson swears the oath, he strikes emotion.
Oh yeah. I think this is pretty incredible. That that's the first thing he does, and she immediately gets called out for being agnostic or an atheist.
Yeah, and that she doesn't. She just pledged an oath to an entity she doesn't believe in, right?
Yeah.
And then here's where the theatrics become brilliant, is that Shelley acts as if this is wasting his time, right? Like, but he manages to plug in there. It's obvious that Congresswoman Hanson has said that she has a disdain for religion as well as those who practice it. And it's like he just throws in as well as those who practice it. Just thunk, just sticks it in there, right? And you're like, oh, fuck you, God! Like, and then acts like it's a chuckle off. And he does this so many times. And the theatrics of it are just, it's kind of mind-boggling. And I said this as a drawback about the movie Suburbia. And I'm going to say it as a positive with this movie, which is sometimes movies push their infuriating aspects so hard that it makes it hard to watch. Mm-hmm. And when it's done poorly, it just means that you don't like the movie. And when it's done well, it means that it makes you hate a system that it's trying to get you to hate. And I feel like that's what this movie does. Even though it has, spoiler alert, a happy ending, it, for the most part, drags you through glass to get to that happy ending where you're just like, oh my God, the system does not reward honest people, right? Like,
no, I mean, it earns its ending, though, I think.
It definitely does. You
do get dragged through this. He plays, he knows he's on TV. He knows what he's doing. He knows that he is playing to his base. You know, I think it's really important to note that how much his fucking wife hates him, like hates him.
Oh my God, that conversation between the two of them, where she's gone through the file that he plans on basically releasing as the smear campaign. Yep. That is this, you know, group sex.
She calls it. She calls it ideological rape. At one point in the movie.
She's a really pivotal character, actually.
It is for the 2 minutes of screen time we get. She is there, but you know, things keep coming up. Is she morally fit for this position? There's even at a point a question of you know, I heard that she, you know, an unnamed source, of course that's everything these days, but an unnamed source said that she took money for the sexual favors she did in college.
Yep, exactly.
And it's just like, you know, just stuff like that. She gets sandbagged on a TV interview.
Oh, let's talk about that TV interview for a minute. This is crazy, cringe-inducing. Also, a fantastic little quick cameo by who? Our main man, John Carroll Lynch. He shows up for one hot second in there as the guy that's like, we had photos of her up, you know, the whole year. And I was like, "Oh my God, it's John Carroll Lynch!"
I don't think I realized that.
Yeah, he was great. Just there for a split second. But you know, I think, like, again, to talk about the masterful direction here, the fact that she gets totally sandbagged in this interview, and we only get to see her answers for the first like minute of it, and then we get to see her handlers and her husband running down that hall to try and get to the control room, and there's so much ramped up tension just by like having somebody have an earpiece in and going, well, I'm not going to answer that. I don't think that that's relevant. And I was like,
I don't have a monitor here. Yeah.
It's so brilliantly directed, right?
I agree. It definitely builds up that tension and gives it something, I don't know, you get half the story. Right? Just like...
And you just know that it's going sideways. All you know is like, this is not what they thought it was going to be, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And so that's an amazing scene. And then I think...
I think something about her character that we need to bring up during all of this questioning and her confirmation here is, you know, Mrs. Runyon at some point when she talks about the ideological rape, she really gives her a juicy piece of information about abortion, knowing that he's going to be pressing this tomorrow in the confirmation, and really pushes this. It gives her a really thing, but I think it really says a lot about her character, that she had every opportunity to use that and did not.
She has the ammo.
That is, to me, proves her worth as a nominee.
Well, because Shelley,
even though nobody knows,
he gets up on his high horse to the point where he invokes the Holocaust, right? In terms of abortion. And you're like, whoa, he's going deep, 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 just like they knew that he was going to. And she swallows it down. And this is after he has played so unfairly that not only has he been the one that's been leaking all of this smear campaign against her, but even to the point where he's like, well, I certainly hope that that none of our viewers out there go to this website, and that you, you know, Congresswoman Hanson, make sure to, you know, sue for libel, www.thepressreleasecorp.com. And you're like, he fucking read it out. Like, you piece of shit, right?
It's on the record. Yeah.
Well, and it just makes you think, like, and I kept thinking about this, and I think there are two really good examples from both sides of the aisle. I would say, whether you're looking at the Russia investigation and some of the crazy ass shit that Devin Nunes did, where it was like, he was like, well, sources have said that blah, 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 blah. And then it was like, the reporters were like, dude, he's hiding in the bushes outside of the White House, waiting for a White House aide to like give him talking points for tomorrow. And you're like, wait, what? And I just, all I kept thinking about when I was watching this movie was that, Devin Nunes with that. And then the hearings for Brett Kavanaugh, right? Like, just that, like, it turned into this entire circus where it was like all this stuff from back when he was in college and like people's memories and it was my best friend Squee at the party and like, we were doing the Devil's Tower. Well, no, that's just what we called a golf move I knew. And all this like wacky shit where you're like, who is telling the truth and who is not telling the truth, and digging up this stuff to create this media circus for us as the audience to consume and then believe exactly what we were already going to believe anyway. So it's just interesting that in the last like year and a half, we've seen two very significant events that reminded me exactly of this movie that's 20 years old.
I definitely thought about Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
Through some of this, obviously quite a bit of different story and allegations there.
Of course.
But the idea of it's nobody's business continues to come up, right?
Unless a law has been broken, right? And in Brett Kavanaugh's case, it was rape, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the case in the Contender. Here, the best that they can muster is that under oath, she said that she didn't. She had never indulged in adultery, right?
Yeah,
but then it turns out that
they bring her out, her husband's ex-wife, and she basically talks about how they got a divorce because of her, and this is not a strong point in her case, but she still stays strong. And
she goes to the Clinton thing, which is not guilty but responsible. Yeah. I love that.
I think we have this great moment. Jeff, Kermit, and Jackson are just pissed off about the adultery thing, and she frames it as like, I didn't commit adultery, he did.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, that's the angle we're gonna play. It's still nobody's business.
But Kermit's pissed again. He's like, you're a goddamn soap opera homewrecker. It's this whole thing about how she's this harlot, right?
We get this awesome scream from Jackson Evans in the Oval Office.
Oh yeah,
and it's a great moment because it really just he's not one. He's been cool this whole movie, right? He's not one to lose his cool, and we get this breaking point with him, and even then you're still like, God damn, I love you.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I thought so. One of the movies I thought so much about while watching this, in particular, the scene where she has the ammo to call out Runyon about the abortion and then doesn't. I kept thinking about Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. I kept just thinking about how the system is not set up for a person with morals. Like that by its very merit, a person who has morals is going to get manipulated or railroaded, right? And so it's like, it just is so interesting that this movie still manages to have this like patriotic slant to it that feels very real, and it doesn't feel cheesy. And her final speech that she gives about the church the church that she worships in, right? And like, this is where I come, and this is where I worship to feel spiritual, is in these hallowed grounds. And I feel like that it's sentimental without ever becoming corny. It just feels really strong, right?
I agree. I think it's very elegant and wonderful, but also I think an important thing to note is that she's not preaching to these people. It's not some big monologue. It's very succinct.
Yes.
And maybe like less than a minute of what she's saying. She's not trying to throw anyone under the bus or anything like that.
No, the monologue will be saved for President Dude a little bit later. And we'll get to definitely. That. Because that's great good. That's good squishy right there. But before we get to that, let's get to the part where this new game is set up. This is right before the White House kitchen is out of Munster cheese. But it's right before that, and it's this moment where Shelley and Evans get a chance to talk, right?
Yeah, they're on the boat. You buried me. This is where the presidency thing happens, which I didn't remember, and gives a lot of justification to why Shelley's character would do some of the things he does in this movie.
Yes,
and
agreed.
He basically wants him to back Hathaway. He's like, 100% get a full confirmation. It should be easy as pie. All this stuff.
He's like, I'm gonna need you to do more than that, though, Shelley. I'm going to need you to really go out on a limb for him.
She's going to step down. She said she would because of all of this. And, who doesn't want a shortcut to greatness is what he says.
Exactly.
Which is a goddamn shame about that Munster cheese.
Yeah, it totally is, man. And we don't know exactly what's happening here. We feel like, as the audience, we feel like it's also a mea culpa. We feel like, they lost, right? They lost. Yeah. They had to have. But boy, this is some 11th hour, the last 5 minutes of a Law and Order episode kind of shit going on, man. This is good stuff.
They're all smoking cigars and stuff.
And we have Hanson, Hathaway, Shelley, who staked his career on Hathaway. They're all there in the Oval Office. And then that dude from the FBI just comes out from behind a curtain? Where is he? We don't even see him. All of a sudden he's like, Mr. Hathaway, and you're like, oh shit, where'd this guy come from? And he starts reading him his rights, and it's because
he knows his rights. Yeah.
He knows his rights because he had paid that girl to go off that bridge. That very first scene of the movie. I mean, it's like it's like an episode of Columbo. It's so cool. You just don't think this movie has so much to say about sexual politics, so much to say about just, the inner workings of the executive branch and just how creepy that stuff can be. But then all of it is packaged inside of this actual mystery, this kind of really interesting intrigue, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that they go for most of the movie here without really her saying whether she did it or not. She's not saying she didn't, but she's not saying she did either. And that's a hard thing to accomplish because just like, Tom Cruise on Castaway getting all of those boxes and he doesn't open them.
You said Tom Cruise. That'd be a way different movie.
Sorry, you know what I meant. Tom Hanks. Of course I meant Tom Hanks.
You imagine Tom Cruise with that big beard?
Yes, I can.
It's Born on the 4th of July. Sorry. No, of course we can.
But that intrigue when he gets that because of his mental, just kind of how he works and processes things, he organizes things and doesn't open them.
Yes.
And you want him to the whole time as an audience member. And here, the whole time you want her to go one way or the other.
Just say it.
Just did it happen or no? And she's like, it shouldn't matter. It's a personal experience. And I love how strong and true she stays. Of course we have, Jackson Evans can't even hold his tongue. He wants to know too.
Yeah.
And we get a little bit of an idea of what actually happened.
What a great little respite. I mean, obviously the kind of climax, the plateau of our movie.
I kind of wish they would have not had that part in there, honestly.
Really?
Just because it would have been great if they would have gone the whole movie with it still being in question. I think when a movie can do that, and you're like, what? Did it? I think that's really.
Oh, that's a really good point.
I think that could have been a strong thing here, but of course they end on this strong State of the Union.
Well,
speech.
Before we get to that, I just want to say that's a really interesting point, Palcher, and I think I would have liked to see that too. I think the only reason why I really like this very human interaction between the two of them, sitting out there on the White House lawn, smoking cigars, and her telling the story.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. If it had been left open-ended, that'd be way more interesting. But I do love what she has to say here, where she says, principles are only worth sticking by when they're inconvenient. Yep. Right? And she says,
love that line.
Answering the question means that it was okay for them to ask it in the first place. And that's good stuff. And
there's your moral of the story.
I agree with you that if it had been a European director, we would never have had that scene.
Yeah.
If it would have been something where it's I want you to feel uncomfortable after the credits roll. Mm-hmm. Right? But instead this has got to kind of give us respite from that, I guess.
All right, let's get into the
President Dude's speech.
Yeah, this is, meant to swell your heart, right? I mean, the music in the movie, the direction is obvious here, but it doesn't keep you from being choked up a little.
Yeah.
And really kind of believing what he's saying here.
Or just wanting of either party, a Democratic or a Republican leader, just want them to not be a lunatic. Just want them to be like sane, complete whole sentences. Not stop one thought midway and then start a new one, but instead like actually like finish whole cognizant thoughts and theories and ideas, right? That other human beings also understand because they've felt those feelings, not something that an alien, a robot, or a monster might feel. Stuff like that. Yeah. Not that I'm talking about anybody in particular.
I have no idea who you're talking about.
The speech is incredible, and he points around in the crowd saying the general, you, and then he just like, at some point you see it on his face, and he just gives it up, and he points right at Runyon, he says, you. And Runyon fucking stands up and walks out.
If that happened today, that would be blown up to shit.
Dude,
crazy. Yeah.
It would break people's brains if somebody actually, like, if a president called out one particular member, especially from like a House Oversight Committee, and they get up and they're like, do, and they leave. But of course, at this point, he just staked his reputation on a dude on a governor who basically paid for a woman to drive her car off of a bridge and then died doing it. Right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, you could probably point that dude out. You could probably call him out.
Yeah, I think it's okay. No, it's a well-crafted, wonderful movie. I always have fun when I watch it. It's been a while since I've watched it.
Same here, man.
Fun to revisit. And
it's just solid. It's such a solid movie.
Yeah, it's just a solid political fiction. Not based on any kind of true story, but it seems all of these seem like they could happen, right?
Yeah.
Outside of maybe parts of V for Vendetta, which we're going to do next week. Obviously that's an overly dramatic movie, but
now we still have 5.5 months left in the year, so I wouldn't. Don't hold your breath.
That's a good point.
We could get there.
We'll get into that. So join us next week. Join us next week when we do V for Vendetta to kind of end out this festival. And then we're going to recast Dr. Strangelove for our 5th episode. So that should be really fun. Excited to get into that one. Please like and subscribe if you like what you see/hear.
Yes.
We're here every week. We do festivals. Please follow along. Thanks so much for watching, and we appreciate it.
Thanks, you guys. So, you know how in the last month, I think they unveiled it after during the beginning of COVID-19, but Facebook released their new emoji that's it's like the little guy, and he's hugging a heart, right?
It says care.
Yeah. It's care. So we have care, we have a heart, we have the thumbs up, we have the laughing guy, and then we have the angry one, right? So, and there's a crying one too, which is always the one that, when people I've known since the inception of Facebook have died, and someone has like put up on Facebook, like, this person, this human being died, and there'll be like 45 crying emojis, and I'm like, oh my God, this is not something that like Philip K. Dick or like Orwell, nobody could ever have been like, in a death notification, in lieu of writing something, you can just bloop, and it's a little crying cartoon. And people are like, look, 45 people are sad that my mom died, or whatever, right? It's like, it's terrible. So that's always my kryptonite. But beyond that, I was going to say,
the whole emojis, talking in emojis things is something I never thought would actually catch on, but it totally has.
It completely has.
And I've always kind of cringed at it, but also used them sometimes. The ultimate breaking point for me was when my dad sent me one.
What was it?
just like a laughing emoji or something like that.
And you're like, I'm out. That's it.
Still, I'm like, whoa, I never thought I'd see that. I can't even believe we're texting right now.
So here's the thing. From what your Facebook feed looks like of what people are saying, what's an emoji that doesn't exist that maybe should be the next one that they roll out? I
was going to ask you the same question. Can we get a pooping one? Just like someone just squeezing hard.
That's maybe? Good. That's good. Where would you apply the pooping one? Like, what's the kind of comment that I would have to write for you to select the pooping emoji?
Anything political?
That's good. That's good. I want the one that have you seen there's like the meme that SpongeBob SquarePants going like about something, like he's just like he's responding so stupidly to the thing. It's like he's repeating the dumb thing you just said, right? So you're like, you know, Donald Trump should blah, blah, blah. And you go, Donald Trump should blah, blah. Like, I want it to be that guy. I want it to be that face that's just like repeating back the stupid thing that you said.
That was almost a Matt Foley impression.
It's close. In fact, my God, that's all it needs to be. It's just a circle with Matt Foley's face in it going, yeah.
Yeah.
And you just put that up and then people are like, hey, fuck you.